Number of researchers from the University of Pittsburgh who are currently working on trials that are related to Parkinson disease or Parkinsonism. Um, we always say that, there's nothing fortunate about being diagnosed with Parkinson disease. But if you're unfortunate enough to be diagnosed in this area, you're very fortunate because we have not only great medical and allied medical teams and services here. We've got a lot of programs, a lot of community support, and really world-class research is being done here also. So we have Sherri, we have Dr. Greenspan, we have Deb, oh, Dr. Josbino, I'm sorry. We go back far. I keep thinking of you in the informal sense. And Dr. Berman also with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Sherri, who is the clinical research director for the Department of Neurology. Sherri, did I do that right?
Clinical research program manager. Close.
Okay, great.
I see. That's kind of interesting, huh?
And Sherri,
I thought it was a parrot.
Pin yourself. And folks, if you can mute yourselves, we hear some conversations about birds in the background. So if you can mute yourself, that would be wonderful. Great, thank you. Take it away, Sherri.
Okay. Well, hi, my name is Sherri Mosovsky, and I'm the clinical research program manager, just like David said, here in neurology. So first, thanks so much to David and the foundation for hosting us, and thank you for joining. Research is really critical. Being a part of research means that you will contribute to the advancement of medical knowledge and help us to move towards new treatments and possibly even a cure for Parkinson's disease. So thanks so much for your time and your interest today. I'm going to talk to you about 3 different studies. And the first one is the Movement Disorders Research Registry. I'm going to spend the most time on that one because it's really simple and it's really the best way to get connected to research in the department. So like I said, the best way to get involved with research is by joining the Movement Disorders Research Registry. So we're not allowed to cold call. I can't go plucking people off the street. I can't go looking through the phone book and say, hey, I have a research study going on. Do you want to be involved with it? So I need a list of people who are actually interested in research. And so by joining the research registry, that allows me then to reach out to you in the future and give you information about studies that we have going on. So the research registry is simply a list of people who are interested that we can call when a new study starts up. So some research studies may include a phone survey or a clinical trial. Others may evaluate your symptoms, but all are going to be Parkinson's and or movement related. So you're not going to be getting phone calls about teenage depression or pregnancy unless it's somehow related to Parkinson's disease or a movement disorder. So keep in mind that we are different from Pitt plus Me, which you may be familiar with, and that's the university-wide research registry, and that includes all Pitt and UPMC studies. But this one is specific just to movement disorders. So anyone of any age can join the registry. Your neurologist and or your PCP, I think that we're on the wrong flyer here. If you could go back to the pinned flyer. Be able to pull that one up. I'll just keep talking while you're, there we go. Okay. Yep. So like I said, anyone of any age can join the registry. Your neurologist or your PCP, your provider, they do not have to be a part of UPMC. In fact, we want you to continue with all of your routine care with your treatment team, as being a part of research does not replace your regular medical care. All studies are voluntary. So that means you can leave the registry at any time or any study for any reason without any consequences. So you may be thinking, all right, so how do I join this? Is it a really complicated process? And it's not actually, it's super easy. You can remotely enroll, and that's just using your computer or over the mail. And then we follow up with a phone call. So no office visits are necessary. So we'll give you a consent form to review and some basic questions about yourself and your movement disorder. And that's pretty much it. So it's really low burden. You will get an annual phone call, and that's just to update your contact information, just to make sure that you haven't moved or anything like that. And then, of course, you'll get a call if we have new studies that come up. New studies, you won't be getting many calls, maybe one or two calls a year. So we're not going to be bothering you all the time. So just to give you an example about how this works. So say Jane wants to join the registry, fills out the consent form, she gives us the basic information that we need over the phone, and she's enrolled. And then a few months later, a new study starts up, and I'm looking for participants. So I pull up the list from the research registry, and Jane is on the list. I call Jane and tell her the new study has started. Would she like more information? So at that point, she's got a couple of options. She can say, yes, I'm interested, and I give her the details. Or she could say, it's not really a good time. I'm going on vacation. I just had surgery. I have a new granddaughter, whatever. Or maybe she's just not interested in the topic of study. So we can just keep her on the list and call her in the future if there's another study that comes up. Or perhaps Jane is actually no longer in research period, and she just wants to come off of the registry list. We can inactivate her from the registry and we won't even call her again. So it's pretty flexible, it's low burden, it's simple, and it really depends on your needs and desires. So Dina is the contact person for the registry, and her name is on that flyer there. I will read out her phone number just in case you're having any technical issues. 412-692-4302. And sometimes people are not even sure if they're in the registry. So if you're not even sure, just give us a call. We'll let you know if you're in it and how you can enroll in it. All right, so the next study that I want to talk to you about is the Restore study. Now, this is for folks that have orthostatic hypotension, which means that their blood pressure drops when they stand up, causing them to feel dizzy, lightheaded. Thank you. Yep, I should have mentioned to switch over to the flyer. Might make them feel dizzy, lightheaded, like they're going to pass out or black out. Symptoms usually appear whenever you stand up or have been standing for some time, and improve when you sit down or lie down. So this is a clinical study to look at the long-term effectiveness of an FDA-approved drug called droxidopa or Northera. Now, I did say that it's FDA approved. However, it was only previously studied for 2 weeks. So we're looking for long-term safety and effectiveness. So this study is 9 months long. Study visits are about once a month, and they take place at the Kaufman Medical Building. You'll get free parking and $50 for travel and meals at each in-person office visit. The very first visit will just be a screening visit. We'll go through the study, let you know everything that's involved, the risks, the benefits, making sure you're a good candidate. You'll get like a physical exam and a neuro exam, all that stuff, just to make sure you would be safe taking the study medication. And then you would be on the droxidopa or the Northera for about 4 months. And then you'll be switched to either that same dose that you were taking or a placebo for 3 months. Like I mentioned, it's totally voluntary. You can come out of the study anytime for any reason if you're not tolerating it or whatever. If you're interested in more information about the Restore study, please give me a call. My number is on that flyer there, 412-692-4659. And the last study that I'm going to talk to you about is the Enlight study. You guys could pull up that flyer. There we go. So this is the light therapy study. The purpose of this research study is to learn if light therapy reduces sleep problems associated with Parkinson's disease and improves quality of life. As a part of this study, we'll use a number of assessments and questionnaires to determine if light therapy improves sleep problems in individuals with Parkinson's disease. Participants must be at least 45 years of age. The National Institutes of Health is supporting the study. There are 5 visits over 4 months, and you're first going to have that screening visit just to make sure that you're a good candidate and you understand everything that happens in the study. You'll get $50 for each in-person visit. Now, there is a fair level of commitment for this study, so I want to review some of the requirements. First, there's daily sleep logs that are required. Now, they only take you about 5 minutes or so to fill out. It's just going to be asking you, what time did you go to bed last night? How many times did you wake up? How well did you sleep? That kind of stuff. So it's not going to take you long, but it is something we need you to do every day. The light therapy sessions will range. You'll either get once a week for an hour, once a day for an hour, or twice a day for an hour each time. So again, there is some commitment there, especially if you get the assignment to do it twice a day for an hour. You're allowed to watch TV or do another activity while you're getting the light therapy, as long as you can sit in front of the light box. The last thing that is required for the study that you have to do at home is wear an ActiWatch. About the size of a wristwatch. It kind of looks a little bit like an Apple Watch, and it's going to track your sleep and your light. It's required that you wear it, but you simply just have to wear it, and you don't have to charge it or take it off or touch it at all. Just have to protect it from water and leave it on. So I like that it's really simple and you don't have to do anything to it. So if you're interested in more information or to schedule a screening for the Enlight study, you can give me a call at 412-692-4659. So that is all that I have today for the trials that I wanted to talk to you about. But thank you so much again. We really appreciate your interest and your time in the clinical trials, because we absolutely cannot do this without you. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Dr. Greenspan, and she's going to talk to you about the Topaz study.
Thank you very much. And again, I want to echo what Sherri said, and thank you all for coming today and also to listening to this. We're very excited about the Topaz study, which is a study funded by the National Institute of Aging. There's help from the Parkinson's Foundation, the National Osteoporosis Foundation, the Parkinson Study Group. And what this is about is this is a study to prevent fractures, and also a suggestion that it may decrease actually the risk of dying using a medication that we commonly use for osteoporosis. So the medication, this is a clinical trial, and the medication that we are using is called zoledronic acid. So the question is, why would we be doing this in a group with Parkinson's or Parkinsonism? And osteoporosis fractures are actually really common. About 1 out of 2 women, so half of the women over the age of 50 will have a fracture in the remaining part of her lifetime. And about 20% of men over the age of 50 will have a fracture. But individuals with Parkinson's, because of the issue of falls, may have or appear to have a greater chance of fracturing, even without a diagnosis of osteoporosis. So the trial is set up to see if this medication, which is FDA approved for osteoporosis, will prevent fractures. And as mentioned, there's also a suggestion that it will increase the risk of dying. In terms of who can join the study, it's individuals that have Parkinson's or Parkinsonism, age 60 or older. If you have not had a hip fracture and you're not on a medication for osteoporosis. The nice thing about this is that it is all done in your home. So it's a study that is done across the country. As I mentioned, it's funded by the National Institute of Health with support from multiple groups. But you don't have to go anywhere for it. And if you can just move the brochure up to the next thing, it'll just show a little bit more about the study. Great. So if you're interested, again, you don't have to have a diagnosis of osteoporosis just because falls and fractures are common. What you would do is you can either call the number at the bottom of the brochure or go to the website, which is topaz.eurekaplatform.org. And if you click on it, it will log you in and give you an invitation to register. So the nice thing about it is the consent is electronic. There's a short health survey. There's a little video talking about the study. The study is, the medication involved is actually an intravenous medication, and it's only given once. This is done again across the country. There's nurses will come in, explain the study more to you, give you the medication over about an hour, watch you go over adverse events, and then you're done. And again, this is a common medication we use all the time. It's generic. We use it for patients with osteoporosis, but you don't have to have osteoporosis for this study. This would be, in a sense, looking at a different indication. So the medicine is given to you over this one-time infusion. We also give you vitamin D for a couple of months before to make sure your vitamin D level is up to a good level. Then we will contact you intermittently over the next couple of years to find out if you've had a fracture. So it is relatively simple. If there are questions or concerns, we have nurses, physicians online. If you haven't been evaluated by a neurologist in terms of the Parkinson's disease, if you haven't been given that terminology, you can also be evaluated online by a neurologist from UCSF in case there was any question that you had or didn't have it. So overall, it's a relatively easy study to do. We hope that you consider it. And again, if there are questions or concerns, you can call in that number or go to the website. Question in the chat is, how long was this studied before it was approved by the FDA? This has been around, it's now generic. So I want to say for 15 years. It was approved for patients that had cancer to the bone. And it's been used for a long time to prevent bone cancer, but less long, although probably about 15 years for individuals that have osteoporosis. It's a common generic drug that we use all the time. For people that have significant osteoporosis, we often give this infusion once a year, but it does last a very long time. Studies show that it can last up to 2 years. So for this particular study, we're only doing the infusion once. So again, thank you very much for allowing me to tell you about it. I hope you'll consider it. And then I think I'm going to pass this on to the next person.
I think we have Deb up next. Is that right? Dr. Josbino?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, my name is Deb Josbino, and I also want to thank you for joining us here today. It's very exciting hearing about these studies, and thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. I am a physical therapist, and I'm on faculty at the University of Pittsburgh. And so today I'm going to talk to you about SPARKS-3. So SPARKS-3 is a study in Parkinson's disease of exercise, phase 3 clinical trial, which is supported by the NIH. So the exercise mode that we're studying is aerobic exercise for the study. And aerobic exercise is a vital treatment for people living with Parkinson's disease. And actually, and interesting, aerobic exercise is a treatment with the most compelling evidence for its potential to slow Parkinson's disease progression. But while we know that moderate and high intensity aerobic exercise provides a multitude of health benefits, it is currently unclear which intensity is more effective for people with Parkinson's disease. So that's what we're looking at. So the SPARKS-3 study is the first randomized control trial that is designed to investigate the effects of moderate and high intensity aerobic exercise on disease progression in untreated individuals with Parkinson's disease. So I'm going to talk a little bit, describe a little bit about the SPARKS-3 study. It's a multi-site study. There's 29 sites scattered all over the United States. Actually, 2 are in Canada, so we're international. And we are going to be recruiting a total of 370 participants, where Pittsburgh is one of the clinical sites. It's very important for this study that people have not started medication for Parkinson's disease. And this is because the effects of medication can potentially confound the results of our study. So in this study, what we're really interested in is how exercise affects Parkinson's disease. And we're going to be building on our prior research, our prior phase 2 study, where the people exercised for 4 days a week. They had a 5-minute warm-up. They did a workout at various intensities for 30 minutes, and then had a 5-minute cool down on a treadmill. But this study is going to be conducted over 2 years. And for 18 months, all the participants will really be tightly supervised and supported by the study team to help them with their exercise program. So basically, this is an 18-month intervention, walking on a treadmill at various intensities. And then we're going to follow the participants for 6 months, because also what we're interested in is we want to see if people will continue to exercise once we take away the support. I know sometimes it's hard to follow protocols and adhering, but this is something that we're going to look at. So in this study, the participants are going to be randomly assigned to one of 2 conditions. One condition is exercising at what we call a moderate intensity, and that's from 60 to 65% of their heart rate max. And to think about what moderate intensity is, that is, while you're walking, you can sing, but you have difficulty, you could talk, but you have difficulty carrying a tune and singing. The other condition of the exercise would be walking on a treadmill for high intensity, or 80 to 85% of their heart rate max. And that would be similar to while you're walking, you have difficulty both with talking and singing. It's really important here to stress that both exercise conditions are very, very good for somebody. So if a person's randomized to either condition, they will benefit from them. So what are some of the research procedures for SPARKS-3? First, if you are participating, you'll complete a telephone screen, and that's with one of our coordinators. They'll be followed by 2 in-person screening visits to confirm that you meet the criteria to participate in the study. And what these 2 visits consist of are physical assessments, a memory and thinking assessment. There will be a blood draw, some questionnaires, and you'll also be receiving a brain scan, a DAT scan to be specific, and that's to help confirm the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. And if you're eligible to participate in this study, you'll then be asked to complete 7 additional assessment visits over the course of the 24 months. And these consist of more physical and memory thinking assessments, some more different questionnaires, blood draws, exercise tests where we look at your VO2, and one additional brain scan at 12 months. You'll be randomized, and that's like flipping a coin, to one of the 2 exercise groups, and you'll be asked to exercise at a specific rate or intensity for 4 days a week for about 30 minutes and on a treadmill. And we're going to ask you also to do 5 minutes cool down, 5 minutes warm up, so a total of 40 minutes. And this will all be on a treadmill. So if you look at our flyer, volunteers must be 40 to 80 years old, diagnosed with Parkinson's disease within the last 3 years, not yet taking medication for their Parkinson's symptoms, and also are not planning to start medications for this Parkinson's symptoms within the next 6 months. We want you to currently are not currently participating in a structured exercise program, and also be willing to do moderate to high intensity exercise on a treadmill 4 times a week for 18 months and participate in study visits for 24 months. Also, too, we're here, our site is at the University of Pittsburgh. We're in the Department of Physical Therapy and also in the Neurology Clinic, a Movement Disorders Clinic at Kaufman Building. So you'll need to travel to those areas periodically for the study visits. So I want us to take a moment and thank you again. This is a really exciting study. It's a long study. It's 2 years, as I said, but it's really focusing on exercise as our main intervention, and specifically walking endurance aerobic exercise. And if you want more, there's more information. It's quite a lengthy study to talk about. It's very exciting, but I'll have you contact our coordinator. And we, like I said, we work very closely with the Movement Disorders Clinic. And actually Dr. Berman is on our study, and Sherri is on our study, and Dina is on our study. But we'll have you contact Kathy Betts, who is in the physical therapy department. She can be reached at 412-383-6736. And she can provide you with additional information regarding our study. And I do think there was a question in the chat, but Dr. Berman got to it. So I want to thank you, Dr. Berman, for that. And I think that kind of wraps up the study in a nutshell, and I'll pass it over to Dr. Berman.
Hi there, let me just share this a second. Okay, you guys can all see that, right? Yes, okay. Thank you guys too. I just want to reiterate what everybody else has said. I'm very grateful for you guys taking the time to hear about research, and I'm really glad to be here. David knows I go way back with the Parkinson's Foundation. When I was training as an MD PhD, I was involved when the foundation was founded, and one of the original board members back when I was a graduate student. So it's been really wonderful to see it evolve to the lengths, to the extent that it has, and all of the programs that it offers. So, so I'm a neurologist and a neuroscientist, and most of the studies that we talked about today were interventions or clinical trials, medicines that may help symptoms or may be neuroprotective. And what I'm going to talk about now is a study that's more research-based and tell you why we're doing it. So one of the problems in clinical trials for Parkinson's disease, if you want to know whether something is protective, the exercise study is an example. If you want to know that it's actually helping protect the brain cells or slow down the disease, you really have to wait a long time. It can be years before we know if a medication is protective. And that's not really ideal for us developing, trying to develop cures or disease-modifying drugs that could slow down the disease. So one of the big interests is, how do we figure out whether these Parkinson's disease medications, how do we monitor them in a timely way? Wouldn't it be great if we could tell in 3 months whether something was protecting the brain cells? And there's a lot of interest in trying to figure that out. So basically, we need a way to monitor the early changes in brain cells, and importantly, some marker that's reversible. So if we saw damage before the brain cells die, we can monitor whether there's improvement in that change to something reversible. That's kind of the goal of being able to monitor these in these clinical trials. So one interest is developing and imaging what we call a biomarker, and that would be a way of imaging something in the brain that could tell us that could see very early changes as the cells are getting sick, but before they're dying, and then something we could reverse. And one of those things, and this is what I'm going to be talking about, is mitochondria. And I won't bore you with all the science of mitochondria, even though I find it in my nerdy way very interesting. But you may or may not know that mitochondria are all our cells, and they're basically the powerhouse of the cell. They produce all of the energy. And brain cells are particularly dependent on these. And in particular, the cells that die in Parkinson's disease seem to have a particular dependence on mitochondria. And so we think they're very important. And there's a lot of evidence for that. So in Parkinson's disease, as you know, most of it is not genetic, but there are these genes, mutations that can cause Parkinson's disease. And interestingly, most of those genes, many of those genes turn out to be involved in mitochondrial function. So that gives us a hint that there's something really important there. And also, we know that if we block mitochondrial function in animal models, if we block mitochondria in all the cells of our body, they don't get sick in all of the cells in their body, they get Parkinson's disease. They get the same cells die. And that's actually the models that we use in the lab. One of the first ones was actually developed by Tim Greenemeyer, who's here at Pitt, doing that. So we think that this is one of those very early changes and something that would potentially be reversible and specific for Parkinson's disease. Now we see that in animal models, but we've never been able to look at that in the brain. But the idea is that this could be a good imaging marker. If we can see mitochondrial changes, it's one of the earliest specific changes in cells in Parkinson's disease before the cells are irreversibly damaged, then maybe we could monitor them in clinical trials. So that's really the goal. And I was interested in this, and the Michael J. Fox Foundation has been interested in developing these. And so they funded this research trial that I'm going to tell you about. And I was excited because I've been studying mitochondrial function in Parkinson's disease in the lab, and I've been interested in taking this now to the next step to really look in humans. So what we've been able to use is a brand new PET tracer. So PET imaging you may be familiar with from cancer studies where they use it to image metabolism in the brain. It uses a small amount of a radio tracer that binds to something. And in this case, we have a radioactive tracer that attaches to one of the mitochondrial complexes that's linked to Parkinson's disease. And we developed a collaboration to do this, and working with the PET Center at Pitt, which is the same group that developed the first PET imaging for Alzheimer's disease, we were able to develop this for use in humans. And so we have this study that I'm going to tell you about, which is Michael J. Fox Foundation funded brain imaging study that I abbreviate as the MITO-PET study. So what is it? The research study on this new imaging marker. Now I point out that this is something that the people who volunteer for this are really doing this to help our science. There's no, it's not a disease symptom treatment. It's not a treatment in any way. You're really doing it to advance the science so that we can hopefully be quicker about our clinical trials or maybe diagnose Parkinson's disease earlier. And this is to look at both early detection and progression of Parkinson's disease and Lewy body disease, which is related. So basically, this is for people 40 to 85 years of age who either have Parkinson's disease or Lewy body dementia. Or I point out, in case you know people who are interested in science, we also need healthy control people who don't have any neurological diseases. So anybody who is interested in participating in research who does not have that could also participate. And we're very grateful to those people who volunteer. It's a 2 or 3 visit study, usually 2, but sometimes 3. And it basically involves two procedures, a brain MRI, which many people have had, and then this PET scan, which is a 90-minute scan. And then there are some questionnaires and a brief exam and other things that go along with this, usually, again, done in 2 visits, and that's it, and then you're done. It is quite a bit, so you are compensated for your time, and that's because, one, it's the time it takes. It is interventional in that you have to have catheters placed in the vein and artery in your arm, so there is that. It's not just, say, a brain MRI. You have to have those lines in place. So there is a little more involved than typical. And so we are grateful. We pay for parking, all of that. We can transport you here so that you don't have to drive and park as well, to try to make it easy for people who are volunteering. If you're interested, the clinical coordinator for that is Patricia McGowan, and her phone number is there, 412-692-2722. And anybody who's interested, either as someone with Parkinson's disease or Lewy body disease or a control, would be very welcome, and we can tell you more about it at that time if you're interested. Yeah, so I think from that standpoint, again, I just want to point out that this is really helping advance the science. And so we're very appreciative of people who do take the time. And I'm always happy to answer any questions about it as well. So that's the main study I wanted to talk about. I will just end with a second study that I'm involved in, which is the Dementia with Lewy Bodies Consortium research study. So I don't know how familiar people are with dementia with Lewy bodies, but it's related both, looks a little bit like Parkinson's disease, it looks a little bit like Alzheimer's disease, and there's some elements of both. And we don't know much about it, but it is related to the same changes in the brain that we see in Parkinson's disease. But we know little about it. So this is a large study with 9 centers that across the country that are basically recruiting people with dementia with Lewy bodies. And not only that, but people who have been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease dementia are also eligible for this study. So that's another thing. If you have Parkinson's disease and with dementia, you may want to be part of this study. This again is not a treatment study. This is a longitudinal study where we're basically monitoring biomarkers over time, imaging, spinal fluid, blood markers, and it's a several year study to get these longitudinal data. And we're 4 years into it. We're actually learning quite a bit about how this disease progresses and what kind of markers in the blood and spinal fluid we are finding. So again, this is to help the research out. It is right now not a clinical trial, but the goal is to understand the disease better so that we can develop better treatments. And if you're interested in about that study, then you want to contact Donna Simpson, and that number is 412-692-2717. So that was it for me. Thank you very much for listening to that. And again, thank you all for joining us with this too.
Do you guys have time for questions? If anyone has a question about either the studies or maybe some of the other things going on at Pitt? If you do have a question, I think you can just unmute yourself, and I think the group is small and manageable enough, I should say, that you can just jump in. Here's that pregnant pause. We need some like.
I have a question, Matt Swider. I was wondering what the research on LRRK gene therapy, how that's coming along. Can anyone answer that?
Yeah, I can. And so none of those studies have results that have been published yet, but they are looking at drugs that affect the activity of that LRRK2, but I don't know the results of those, and they have not been published yet.
Is Pitt involved with that study?
We are not involved in that study, no.
Okay.
We were involved in some of the other studies, including the ones that were more directed towards the protein synuclein, if you're familiar with that. So synuclein is the protein that basically clumps up and aggregates in the brain in Parkinson's disease. And if you overproduce it, we know that can cause Parkinson's. So there's several clinical trials that are geared towards lowering that synuclein. We were involved in one of those early ones. Now those studies, so far, the first study did not show a benefit, but there's many different ways of getting at that. And I'm actually excited about that. There's several different studies that are going on with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything in the pipeline that you guys are looking at that, might come in, recent future or sometime?
Sherri, you might be able to answer that if there's some studies about coming up.
I don't know of anything yet. I know that, Dr. Greenmeyer has talked that there are some coming down the pike, but we have not gotten any information quite yet. I think with COVID, it has really put a kink in things, and we started the Enlight trial during COVID, so it's not unheard of. But I think that some companies could potentially be pulling back a little bit just because of the difficulties with data collection and such with COVID. So, but hopefully we're nearing the end here, and we can kind of move forward full steam and kind of pick up again. So But no, I haven't heard of anything right this minute.
Good. Any other questions, folks? Quiet crowd today. All right. Well, thank you all so much for jumping on with us today. It's really cool that, you know, Pitt is such a center for Parkinson's research. And, you know, I remember when I started many years ago, Dr. Zygmunt's lab was a huge deal and really kind of seminal work in exercise and Parkinson disease, and to see how it's really developed from the work that that Dr. Zygmunt and his lab was doing. So I don't know if folks appreciate that from, you know, all the work that's been going on here at Pitt. So, and we always encourage people to jump in on the studies whenever you're able and whenever you're comfortable with that, because, you know, every therapy that's available now is a result of someone else that took part in these studies years and years ago. So I think it's important to pay it forward whenever possible. You know, may not
David, I have
be.
one more question.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So if you're involved, if I'm involved in I have Parkinson's and I'm involved in another study that involves measuring physical activity and so on, how does it affect my ability to be involved in some of these other studies that you did outline today?
I'll leave that up to the researchers.
Are there conflicts?
So this is Susan. I talked to you about the Topaz study, which is the osteoporosis fracture prevention with osteoporosis medication called zoledronic acid, and it won't make a difference. There's no issue with doing or not doing exercise in this particular study.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Deb Josbino. Thank you for your question. It does matter for our study because exercise is the result the variable that we're looking at. So we do have some restrictions really in order for us to make some good decisions and look at the impact of exercise on Parkinson's disease. You'll need to be doing no more than 120 minutes of moderate exercise a week for no more than 6 months. So, and we'll query that when you call.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And again, I just wanted to bring up the chat. We had a question about the DAT scan, and Dr. Berman answered it, but we use a DAT scan in the SPARCS-3 to help to confirm the diagnosis of PD, and you'll get it at a baseline and again 12 months later.
Donna, I saw that you raised your hand. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have a couple comments just on the NeuroPet tracer or the MitoPet study. You know, you want people that don't have Parkinson's to participate. And I was wondering if you were focusing on people that have the test for the gene, because it would be interesting to see.
Right. So yeah, that's a great question, but we're not. So right now, we're not testing for the gene, and this is really a pilot study. So it's a small study here, basically to determine, is it a good biomarker? Can it detect the difference between people with Parkinson's disease and people without Parkinson's disease, as we suspect? And then if it looks like it's a good biomarker, then we'll expand it to a bigger trial to understand it better. So this is really the first time that we've been able to use this in people with Parkinson's disease to see if it worked. So we're not at that stage where we would be doing that.
And then if you found that it would be a good biomarker, would you use this in the standard treatment of Parkinson's disease to see if you're actually doing stuff that's neuroprotective?
Well, that would be the goal, right? So the goal is exactly that. The goal is that if it is a good marker, can we see, let's say, let's use the example of exercise, or some other medication treatment. if we imaged people before and we saw where the problems were, and then we gave the medicine, could we in a few months' time see that this is improving? That would be a really good marker that it's actually protective as opposed to just, say treating symptoms. So that's exactly the goal that we hope to do. Now, it's early, so we don't know, but that's what we're working on.
And then my other question is for the osteoporosis study and neuroprotective studies, besides looking at drugs, are people also looking at functional medicine and natural cures? Like, they have shown that, I don't know how you say that name, but it's called Fava Beans or Muricosapurins, or however you say that name, have been neuroprotective. And a study was done in Britain in 2004. No one ever followed up on it. It's a natural form of levodopa that has not the same side effects and could be neuroprotective rather than the medicine. And then with osteoporosis, there's a company called OsteoStrong that has a way of increasing bone density without drugs. I mean, is all this natural medicine also being incorporated with the physical science? Because it seems like we're not getting anywhere unless we combine them.
So I can answer the osteoporosis question. I'll let Sarah or Deb answer the neuroprotective one. So for the osteoporosis, you're exactly right. We would love to have natural things, and there are available, and we suggest that everybody do them in addition. So for example, exercise is great for the bones and balance. Natural things that contain calcium are really good and important for the bones, for bone health. And vitamin D is good for muscle health and bone health and balance. So and we can get some vitamin D from sunshine, although we often don't get it because we live in Pittsburgh and it's not so sunny most of the year, and people don't want skin cancer and wrinkles. So we often don't get our vitamin D from sunshine. But there are lots of natural things, and you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, even with doing all these good things, people still fall and fracture. And so the next level is often happens to be these medications. And OsteoStrong has been kind of a new program to help the bones. They don't have quite the studies and backing to similar to what these medications have, and the large studies that have been done. They're more smaller ones, but it is an interesting program, just showing that impact, like high intensity impact from this OsteoStrong program helps the bone. We don't really know how much it will help the balance or prevent falls. But you're absolutely right. And we are very excited. There are things coming down the road in terms of improving or maintaining muscles as we get, and strength as we get older. And those would be terrific too. So we're not eliminating it. We want to add on to the natural things that we can do. And certainly, again, we all suggest exercise for all kinds of things, not just Parkinson's, but cardiac health, respiratory health, our muscle tone, our bones, all kinds of good things.
Yeah, I'll add to that about the mucuna pruriens, which you mentioned. And what I don't know everything about that, and I may not be completely up to date, but that's a supplement that does have a naturally occurring form of levodopa, which is what people take in Cinemed and is the precursor to dopamine. So what I know about it is that it's been shown to have a symptomatic benefit like Cinemed does, because it makes dopamine, but I haven't seen studies suggesting that it's neuroprotective. There's some cell studies, but those don't always translate. And I don't know of any human studies that have looked at that as a protective therapy. One of the problems with the natural supplement field is that they're often not studied to the same way, and they often can make claims in ways that aren't necessarily tested. And that makes it difficult sometimes to sort out, because they They don't look at necessarily at side effects. They're not held to the same standards that other medications we are, and that can kind of confuse the picture. But you know, I'm all for what you're talking about in combining these, you know, these modalities to help in the disease. I think everybody would agree with that.
I have a question. Early in my Parkinson's, I went to Kathy Branfast and for exercise programs, and she explained to me. I wanted to find out if this is accurate of what she explained to me because it was such a long time ago. But as you do more exercise and you're losing your brain cells, that if you the activities you're doing that involve balance and building your allowing you to get flow in your motion is because you're transferring the work of doing that exercise or your movements over to another part of your brain, which kind of takes over or adds what it needs to to make it better for you. Is that fairly accurate, or is that a theory, or have any of you ever heard that?
So I'll tackle this one, and I know Kathy Branfast well. I actually worked with her for many, many years when I first moved here to Pittsburgh. So what we're looking at is, as Parkinson's progresses, the loss of automatic movements tends to be impaired, and the thought is by using other circuitry, such as bypassing some of that neural circuitry in your brain called the basal ganglia, and trying to pull out some cerebellar loops might help with making some of that movement more fluid. But the bottom line is that exercise is good, and it's been well established too that not only aerobic exercise, but also strengthening exercise and balance exercise is like I call it my perfect triad, my perfect recipe for just overall health and promotion of improved mobility.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. There's a question in the chat. It says, offhand, what about fava beans or natural sources as having an effect on off periods?
I'm not familiar with fava beans having an effect on off periods. It's not something I have heard or read about, but
I bring this up at all my meetings now. People may notice that, because I started to look for something, and Susan, my sister has Parkinson's, and Dr. Susky is her doctor. You're with her group, right? Yeah. And
yes, I am. Sorry, I was muted.
I just sent her 2 references on fava beans and velvet beans. They're not the same thing. And because I've been experimenting with them and I think there's been other studies done with this as treating Parkinson's and not treating with medicine, done in New Hampshire or something. I have to look up all my references, but just to let that person know, my sister I just experimented. I bought a can of DeLalo's fava beans, and I gave her about 6 beans, but they say that the bad side effect of fava beans is you have to eat too many, and you'll be full of gas and, and otherwise, but she only had 6 beans, and all of a sudden she came up really fast. She was like she was on from a dead down. And it didn't seem like it had to go to the small intestine. It's absorbed differently through the stomach or something. But I'm looking into all this, and I did send 2 references on urine being neuroprotective to Dr. Susky, and I can send them to you too.
I think if I'm correct, that fava beans is another product that has levodopa in it. Since levodopa is an amino acid, it's around. So that might be why it has that, could potentially have that effect.
Because it seemed like a possible cure that could be more predictive than taking pills that have to get absorbed through the small intestine and you can't eat protein. these are absorbed differently. And in these articles I read, they have the potential of giving you longer on periods and coming up faster, as well as being neuroprotective. And I just wondered why this isn't being studied, because it's readily available and it's not a drug that you have to pay a lot of money for, you know. Although it is hard to find fava beans and velvet beans to even buy in this area.
I wonder if it's, you know, if fava beans have levodopa. I think one of the reasons why we like why we may as physicians tend towards the levodopa that we know is that we can regulate how much is there, whereas you don't really know what you're getting in a supplement, even a supplement that's sold, you know, are not necessarily regulated. So that might be why. But I know people are studying these, but it's not as simple to. The neuroprotective question is particularly difficult because anything that makes your symptoms better may make your symptoms better, but we don't know what it's doing in the brain. Neuroprotection we think of as keeping the brain cells healthy, which is really another question, and that's a hard question to answer in all of our studies, and that's why we're doing the studies that we're doing.
Right, we need that biomarker. You're right. So the other question I had is I just looked at another recent study that looked at how to prevent Parkinson's disease. And it was a big study, like in Switzerland, with 48,000 people over a long period of time. And they determined that vitamin C and vitamin E in people that took those as supplements could decrease the risk of getting Parkinson's by like 32%.
Yeah, again, I'm not familiar with that study. They did a big study with vitamin E quite a while ago that did not show neuroprotection. There was interest in vitamin E. There have been some other studies of supplements like coenzyme Q10, which we actually thought was neuroprotective in the first study, but in subsequent studies didn't maintain that finding. So there's certainly a lot. We certainly know environmental factors feed into vulnerability to Parkinson's disease. And understanding that's going to be really important.
All right, I think we're running out of time. And Dr. Berman, you said you had a 1 o'clock patient, so we're sorry to keep you a little later. But
so apologize to them when I'm a few minutes late.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you all for joining in with us. Great programs and research going on, and thanks for answering questions also. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you all for coming in
Thank
today.
you.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.